In 1969, a group of astronauts changed the world. They walked on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
In 1972, our journey ended. We've never been back. 2010 begins a year of change. Private companies are working on next-generation spaceships. Governments are looking to go back to the moon and on to Mars. It's time to look up and dream again. It's time to push humans into the cosmos. It's time to educate and engage the planet. It's time for Space Vidcast.
Welcome to Space Vidcast 315 for Friday, April 23rd. I don't know where February came from. 2010. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham, and with me, as always, is the beautiful, lovely, and wonderful Carrie Ann Higginbotham. We will be your hosts for this evening, and what an evening we have got for you. A little bit later on, we've got Jeffrey Manber, and hopefully I pronounced that right, the author of Selling Peace, which you can buy on apogeebooks.com. And would we call him the father of
Privatized space?
privatized space?
Well, maybe Russian privatized space.
The uncle?
The uncle?
The uncle, he's not really...
That makes him sound like he's a pedophile. I wouldn't...
That's an interesting way to open the show. You know, I did want to throw out a quick thank you to a bunch of people who have made a huge amount of changes for the Space Vidcast shows recently. One of them is Colton in our own chat room, who has made it so that if you're on an iPad, and let me hit the little load button, but we'll see if you can actually see this. Check this out. That is us streaming live through the, I'm pretty sure I'm going to tear the space-time continuum, but yeah, you're going to have to wait a moment. But that is live streaming on the iPad.
Live.
Well, no, it's live. It's just a
It's
little delay,
live.
right?
It's just a
and then
little
I'll
delayed.
I'll make that go full screen so you can see it. But that is very, very cool. And so you can watch Space Vidcast or NASA or any launch event that we're covering live right there on your iPad. It looks amazing. So and you need nothing. There's no
It's
application.
a little disturbing, actually, because I can see us watching us.
There's nothing you need to do to make that happen. You just need an iPad. It also works on your iPhone and iPod Touch, so any of your iDevices that will work with. In addition, we've got Pete in the chat room, who helped get the advertising-free version of our players for Epic subscribers. And if you want to learn more about Epic, you can go to spacevidcast.com/epic, and that's what helps make the show possible. And then, of course, we have to thank Loretta.
Yes.
And why are we thanking Loretta?
Oh, well, I've been thinking Yuri. Because,
Yuri himself?
Yeah,
Yuri Gagarin?
Yeah, after Yuri's night, he was just so thrilled. He had to send us a present. So no, big thanks to Loretta and all of everyone at Yuri's night.
Are we going to show the present?
Well, we have to now if we're talking about it, because this extra box came in the mail after Yuri's night, which actually was really funny because it was this cute little, I don't have it with me, this cute little small box, and it was like, hey, you know, it was addressed to Yuri Ann and Ben Gagarin, I think it was. It was really funny. And it was talking about, you know, thanks for everything you guys did for Yuri's night. Really appreciate. May the force be with you. And I was really excited, and I opened it up, and there's this pack of AAA batteries. But that was the only thing in the box at all. And so I was very confused. But then a couple of days later, it all made sense.
Why? Because that's right. That lightsaber we were, yeah.
It's so loud. Sadly, you can't actually cut your arm off.
It's not a real lightsaber.
But yeah, no. So I believe it was John Verville who won his variation thereof. He is getting his. It's in the mail. Don't worry about that. But we did get one.
Or is it?
Yeah. So, and anyway, yeah, very, very cool, and we are loving it. And we've already lightsabered a couple of the cats.
They enjoy that.
They don't really like it a whole lot. It's the noise, I think, kind of freaks them out a little bit. But In any case, so yeah, we've been having a lot of fun with that, and thank you very much for that. And you probably will just kind of see it light up every once in a while from now on. So there.
You know, and a couple other just quick news items. We don't have video of any of these things, but the test vehicle, the X-37B, launched via an Atlas V earlier today. Well, yesterday, if you're doing this by coordinated universal time.
Right.
So that's very, very cool, and that's basically an unmanned space shuttle, essentially, and it's a smaller version. There's some video clips of it online. It looks really, really cool. In addition, the first Minotaur 4 from Orbital was launched earlier today. It was just a few, again, if coordinated universal time, that'd be yesterday.
Right.
It was just a couple of hours ago, and so that's another. That one's a little bit more difficult. I'd say, yay, go privatize space, but they basically used, I believe the Minotaur 4 used spent ICB, or not spent, but the solid motors from a few ICBMs from the military, so they cheated. They didn't really SpaceX that one, but you know, it's cool that they're doing that nonetheless. So a couple really cool launches. I would tell you to go watch the X-37B, but I'm not sure how much of that they're actually going to let us see. I think they're going to just be like, here it is with a giant black box over it.
Well, and I love what Pete the Justice said. He said his favorite line was, and at the request of our customer, we now will terminate coverage.
Oh, I love it when they do that.
Right. And sorry.
Yeah, and you'll see NASA do that from time to time. They'll just be like at T+9 minutes, and they'll be like, yeah, no more. We're done.
Just so you know. Well, I mean, at least they warn you, right? So.
I'll let you do the intro.
Oh, is that what we're going to now?
Yes, that's my segue for that.
That was a great segue.
You
Thanks
like
for
that?
that. Yeah. So,
hang on, I'll do this the entire intro.
So our guest tonight is Jeffrey Manber. Stop. Who is considered to be the first American to have an official role with the Russian Space Agency. Well, I guess he's not considered, but he is the first American to ever have an official role with the Russian Space Agency. His journey began with the Reagan administration when he was an advisor to the Department of Commerce, where he helped engineer the first commercial research contact between a Boston company called Payload Systems and the Soviet space station Mir. We all remember Mir. In 1991, he was asked by Yuri Semenov, the general director of the Soviet space organization NPO Energia, to open and run an American office, where he helped bridge the gap between NASA and the Russian space programs. From his unique vantage point, Manber bore witness to the paradox of commercial Russian space industry battling American space contractors intent on preserving their monopoly on the space operations. So that's who we have as our guest. He's done lots of other space things. I won't even get into it because it's such a long and involved list.
One of them is MirCorps.
Yes.
And there's an incredible movie about that.
Orphans of Apollo.
Orphans of Apollo. But let's bring in Jeffrey and welcome to the welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here.
So you've got a I don't actually think this is a newish book. Selling Peace Inside the Soviet Conspiracy That Transformed the U.S. Space Program. Available now on apogeebooks.com.
Yep.
You are uniquely suited to write this particular book because you did a lot of work with the Russians kind of back in the day. So let's back up a little bit and what inspired you to write the book in the first place?
Well, actually, that's a good question. Usually people ask me, why did you get involved with the Russians? And the answer is, I came in second or something. It wasn't a lucky day or something like that. But I wrote the book because I left the industry after MirCorps. And when I came back, I was really surprised. I found out everybody had forgotten what had really taken place. And the big boys had rewritten history. And there was no understanding of how much we needed to rely on the Russians in the 90s, how much they stepped up and helped us, and I saw the same errors happening again, and so I really wanted to lay down a history of what happened and why we needed the Russians, why we need the Russians today, and where we're going in space. So I wrote it because everyone was politely and conveniently forgetting how much we needed their help.
Well, jog our memory. What happened?
Well, I'll start with today. That militarily secret X-37B that launched, as you mentioned, launches on the RD-180 engines, which are Russian. Mm-hmm. And so here you have the paradox that we have a DoD classified program, and it can't take place without our cooperation on a commercial level with the engine maker that does the RD-180. But really what happened, to step back, is that it became clear in the beginning of the 90s that we were incapable of building space station Freedom. And we were in the very, very embarrassing position that we had spent billions of dollars to that point. We promised Ronald Reagan we'd build it in 8 years and $8 billion, and along came Bush Sr., and we still were incapable of building it. And it was really the Russians that were the first to come out and say, you know something, maybe commercial is the way to go. We'd like to market our goods and services to you. We'd like to enter into commercial contracts with you. We want you to use our Mir. They went to the Europeans and said, you know what? If you want to fly to the Mir, you're going to have to pay us. And everyone was scandalized at the time. But that really saved the whole space station program by our working together with them.
And is that kind of where MirCorp was born out of at that point? The ability for Russians to say, yeah, we'll commercialize this?
Yeah, I mean, the amazing thing is, I mean, the book chronicles my experience. I was just fortunate to be there at some of the key moments when it was the Russians, of all people, it was the Russians that had to teach NASA over and over again how to do things commercially. And it was really embarrassing for me as an American to sit there and watch the Russians talk about profit and gross margins and goods and services and commercial contracts. And it was NASA who was always saying, no, 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 we can't talk about money. Oh, no, no, we want to barter everything. And I used to say in the 90s, if you wanted to work for the capitalists in space, you worked for the Russians. If you wanted to work for the socialists, you worked for NASA. And I helped privatize a company called Energia, and they were given control of the space station, and that's who we ended up doing business with at MirCorp.
So describe for a moment, because I'll just blatantly throw out MirCorp. Describe for a moment what MirCorp is, and more to the point, what a big deal it was that they had privatized Mir itself. Because I mean, you could send anyone up there essentially, kind of.
I mean, again, everything we're debating now in the Obama administration, the current policy debate, I saw that all happen with Russia 10 years ago. And in 1999, the Russian Prime Minister, Primakov, privatized the Russian space station Mir and gave it back to the company that developed it, Energia. Energia was a private company with shares of stock. I own stock in Energia. Many Americans own stock through their pension funds. And Mir was privatized. The astronauts, the cosmonauts, the European cosmonauts were all paid on a commercial. It was all on a commercial basis, everything being done, and they were running out of money. And Energia was running out of money, and the Russian government no longer controlled the Mir. And so the Russians and the investor Walt Anderson, and I think we all know the story of Walt Anderson, both on the good side, the pioneering efforts that he's done, and on the unfortunate side that he's sitting in jail today for tax evasion. But he stepped up to the plate and was the lead investor in MirCorp. And we signed a deal to operate the Mir space station. We leased the Mir space station. And what was so cool about it is that when we announced our business plan, everybody laughed. But with all the political problems, and the book goes through all the boycotts and everything Dan Golden's NASA did to suppress it, when the Mir came down, when we ended our relationship with the Mir, we had already signed Dennis Tito to go to space. We had already signed with NBC and Mark Burnett of Survivor to do a game show where the winner would go to space. We had negotiated with James Cameron, the director, to do an IMAX film where he would do a spacewalk. And I'm very proud of the fact that when the Mir came down, we had $160 million in customer backlog. And from my vantage point, not only did we prove the business model, and the business model being just like aviation, where a commercial company can sell tickets and get customers, and the manufacturer builds the hardware, and the government provides the regulation. And that's the same situation in aviation, and it's what MirCorp showed. But I'm also proud of the fact that all the current generation of space entrepreneurs that look like we're finally making it really got their first data points from MirCorp. We proved there was a market for space tourism. We proved there was excitement. We proved that once you get outside of the government agency and contractors, you could get the public worldwide to really get excited and like space again.
So that was back in like 1992-ish, right around that time.
99, no, MirCorp was 99, 2000.
Okay.
We privatized Energia in 93, 94. Okay. I helped realize do the first space station contracts. The Russians built our first 2 modules. That was all 95, 96. I was involved in the beginning of Sea Launch, the marketing of the Proton. That's 97, 98. Then I left the industry the first time, got out quick. And then I was suckered back in to do MirCorp. That was 99, 2000, 2001. We tried to do Lance Bass, if you remember that, the boy band NSYNC. That was 2002. And then I got out of the industry again. Now I'm back. I'm back again.
So what keeps bringing you back to space? I mean, obviously you have a deep love for space if you keep coming back to it.
I don't know. It's like a relative you can't get rid of, I suppose. But the first time I came back was a MirCorp. It was just too much of an opportunity. And in the book, I describe how I was leaving. I didn't want to work with the Russians anymore. But MirCorp was too historic an opportunity. It was everything I had worked on my whole career. I also worked for Pan Am-Sat early on with the chairman when we busted up the Intelsat monopoly. So it's not just NASA that were the bad boys. It was also in SATCOM, everything coming out of the Cold War era. This time I came back because I believed and believe that real change is coming now. And I am struck by the fact that slowly the aerospace contractors are throwing in the towel, and they recognize that the government has to be a customer. And that just opens up so many exciting things we've always worked for. And I'm excited about this whole generation. I have a company now called NanoRacks, which has signed a Space Act agreement with NASA, and we just launched on the last shuttle. And we're a permanent addition to Space Station for research. And so I've put my money into this, and I just think this is the time. So let's give it a shot and see if we can do it this time.
Now, you equate a lot of this to what the Russians did 10 years ago, but let's not forget we did splash Mir. I mean, MirCorp was doing a really good job. Like you said, you had contracts, you're ready to go, and then the Russian agency was like, nah, splash it. I realize there's a lot more to it than just that. There were a lot of politics, but what's preventing the same thing from happening again?
Well, I mean, the station was deorbited because NASA was applying the political pressure to bring it down. And I think that this time I know there's a consensus this time to keep the station up there to, as they say, 2020 and beyond. Mm-hmm. And what really excites me, and the sad thing is I get excited about things like this, is that for the first time we have a permanent station, but we also are not single hardware dependent to get to it. I can fly to the station in 2011 on 4 or 6 Russian cargo ships. I can fly with the Japanese. I can fly with the French. And let's hope in several years I can fly with the American entrepreneurial ventures, SpaceX and Orbital. And so what you have is, and that's just LEO, that's just what's going on today that's there. And we've never had such an opportunity. And what I want to do is help turn LEO into a marketplace and help make Space Station an American-style open marketplace. I want to drop protectionism. I'd like to see the point where space agencies don't practice protectionism. And so I think we have a stable policy now.
You answered my question. I was going to ask you about that. So, okay, now we know how he feels about, SpaceX and all of those companies. But question came in.
Well, if I may.
Yeah.
Because there's a paradox. We have to keep pushing. I'm completely for a commercial marketplace. Mm-hmm. And that means that SpaceX has to stand on its own. And if it turns out 5 years from now or 10 years from now that China is the low cost in space transportation, the way China is the low cost in manufacturing, you have to accept that. So I'm not for protectionism, whether it's on the Earth or in space. Mm-hmm. And that gets some of my friends angry because they're so excited as I am that SpaceX looks like it's going to make it. But okay, after those baby steps, if it makes it for a year or 2 or 5 years, SpaceX has to compete. and I have to compete against the Chinese and the Russians and India. And so what I'm excited about is we're moving towards a real marketplace, not a quasi-hybrid where NASA's promoting a couple of American commercial companies.
Well, let's talk about SpaceX a little bit more. They just got the COTS contract as well for, I forgot the exact amount, 1.6 billion, 1.2, 1.8, an even number. Do you think that will help or hurt them in the long run? Because prior to that, they were doing, their own thing. It was Elon, kind of helping fund it with other investors, and then, actually doing payloads for companies. They didn't have the big, huge government contract. Is that to their benefit?
It's completely to their benefit, and it's really exciting because of the way COTS is structured. It makes NASA as a commercial customer. And it's not a cost plus. It's not the usual situation where NASA was designing the vehicle. And it's really exciting that NASA is saying, we will pay for the cargo that's delivered. So that's really good.
Do you think Mir Core will rise from the ashes and we'll have an ISS core, as it were?
Yes, I do. Already a lot of folks are not taking notice that Congress has designated the American portion of International Space Station as a U.S. national laboratory. And with NanoRacks, when I signed an agreement with NASA, I signed it to be part of the U.S. National Lab. And I just think that's way cool. And I understand that you can't do game shows in the National Lab, but I like the fact that it is a national lab. And I think we will see in a year or two a private sector organization running our first national lab in space. And so I think we're seeing very real change coming.
So jumping off of the national lab thing and going back to something that you said earlier, talking about NanoRacks, can you tell us a little bit about NanoRacks and why you started it and what it is?
Yeah, I was surprised when after I wrote the book and I returned to the industry, I discovered that basically the previous administration and my dear friend Mike Griffin had basically ended all space station utilization. And there wasn't a dollar that had been available for use of the space station. And nobody was using the space station. And a group of us came up and said, it's really impressive what's happened with the CubeSats, those little satellites. And they started as a university project, and it's grown. The whole idea of miniaturization, the whole idea of standardization is critical. And right now you have a situation in space research where if I fly suborbital, and maybe I fly with SpaceX, and then I'm going to go to the station. Every time I have to rebuild the hardware. So we said, why don't we put up some platforms on the station that use the CubeSat form factor, and we can lower the cost dramatically to use space station.
I love it.
So I'm charging under $50,000 for 30 days on the station. And that includes getting your data down, and that includes power. And I just think we can create a market at those prices, and the fact that I can fly 4 to 6 times a year.
And you said that some just went up on Discovery, and so I guess they just came back down now on Discovery. Or no, they're still up there, are they?
No, it's what went up on Discovery was our platform. Okay. It will be inserted permanently on the U.S. National Lab in about 4 weeks. Nice. It had our first customer, University of Kentucky, and they're also our partner, a very innovative program called Kentucky Space. And I'm really proud of the fact that pre-launch we signed 5 customers, including a high school. First time a high school has paid to do space research. And every time I go to NASA and say I have a new customer, and that they're saying to me, when you say customer, are they paying for it? And I go, yes, when I say customer, they're paying for it. And so I'm really proud of the fact that we have 5 customers, including a protein crystal growth project. And I just think that that is the future, to have an infrastructure and allow the commercial sector to sell the tickets. If I could sell game shows, I can sell research on a station.
I should hope so.
You said you could go up 4 to 6 times a year when the shuttle, because you just went up on the shuttle. So when the shuttle retires, what platform are you using to go up? Are you using some of your Russian connections to go up on Soyuz, or how are you?
No, we're going to go up on the Russian Progress, but for now we're doing it through NASA. We can go up on the Japanese vehicle. We can go up on the French vehicle, and we can return some small samples to the Soyuz. But right now, if you really think about it, there is a routine access to the space station post-shuttle from 3 nations unmanned cargo ships, and that has me real excited. That's a real market there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Somebody in the chat room asked, which rack will be inserted? I can't talk. Which rack will they be inserted to? Like an express rack or something else?
It's an express rack, but this also has me really excited. It's going into the GEM, the Japanese module.
Okay.
And I love that because they got really good equipment there, really good research stuff. And so I'm just excited. We're a permanent part, and we're a private sector company, and we're adding to the infrastructure of the space station.
That's awesome.
How do we change the mentality of people? Because it seems like the Russians have the right mentality of commercializing space, and NASA's kind of moving towards that mentality. But is there anything we can do to speed that up and get people to say, yeah, you know, there is money to be made in space. It isn't just a giant gaping black hole where we just throw our money and it forever disappears.
I mean, I'll give you 2 answers, and I don't mean to be flippant. In the book, I describe anecdote after anecdote of how the fact that the Americans with NASA could not take money, but the Russians could receive money, it changes you psychologically. I mean, that's what makes America strong. When you don't have money, it's called socialism or communism. And so first way we can have change is to put the fear of God into the NASA folks, which is happening. And that's good, because they need to be prodded to understand that space has to be just like any other sector. And the second is we have to reach a point when NASA can accept and give money for goods and services. And you'll see the people, the men and women of NASA begin to be proud of saving money, of realizing ways that they can do things differently, and when they don't have something in-house, paying for it. And I think that's what needs to happen.
Actually, go ahead and ask that one now.
Oh, okay. Another question came in from the chat room about the nanoracks, wondering how big that market really is.
You mentioned 5 customers right now. How big do you see it growing in the next 10 years?
10 years, I think in the next 2 years, we're charging universities $25,000 to do 30 days on the station, commercial $50,000.
Nice.
That means that we're in the budget of hundreds and hundreds of high schools and colleges worldwide, and we're in the budget of commercial companies, and this is critical, that we can say to them, it's low enough in price that you can fail. It's okay. It doesn't have to be the old system of NASA where it's $8 million and you spend 5 years, and if something goes wrong, your career is over, so you don't experiment. And so with nanoracks at $50,000, we call it for one cube lab. If you want to do biopharmaceutical, probably takes 2 or 4. So for $200,000, you can do a 30-day mission on the station. And that means you can fly twice a year, 3 times a year, and experiment. So I think it's a huge market.
Where do we go from here? I mean, so you've got the nanoracks, and you're bringing experiments up, but what about humans? What's the path in the future for stuff like that?
Well, first off, at this point, I'll leave that to Elon Musk and the Russians, and soon the Chinese, and after them the Indians, and maybe the South Koreans. So I don't know where. Oh, and let me not forget Sir Richard Branson and X-Corp. But what I think is I can contribute the lessons that I learned from NearCorp and the lessons of not only how you market, but also the relationship that should exist between the government, the manufacturer, and the company selling the tickets. So I think we're on the cusp of finally a new era where the government is the regulator, at times it's the commercial customer, and the ingenuity of the private sector is allowed to thrive.
Much like our automobile infrastructure. The government maintains infrastructure, the automobile companies build the automobiles, but they're regulated by the government to make sure that we don't kill ourselves.
Right.
And it's a thriving industry.
Right, and when NASA folks fly to Europe, or they fly to Los Angeles, they don't design, develop, and operate the plane. They allow it to be an Airbus and a Boeing, but even Airbus and Boeing know they can't sell the tickets. And they turn to people like Richard Branson and United and JetBlue. They don't know how to build a plane. They know how to sell tickets. And I'm absolutely convinced that if the space model was the aviation model and Boeing was selling tickets, we'd have like one flight a week to Europe and seats would cost $30,000. And there'd be no market. People would say, you can't lower the price. There's nobody who wants to go to Europe. So yeah, I do want to change I think we're on the verge of changing the relationship, and a lot of good folks at NASA understand this now, that they have to behave as commercial customers.
Go ahead and ask your...
Okay, another question, pardon me, that came in from the chat room is asking, what would you charge a hobbyist to get a CubeSat launched?
Well, right now we cannot launch CubeSats from the station. I'm hoping we will be able to in a year or so. I'm more hopeful that there'll be private launch vehicles that will handle that. Awesome. But if we did, we would probably charge. I mean, let me just say that we're charging 30 days on the station for between $25,000 and $50,000 for a CubeSat form factor.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. We're close to done on time for the show. Jeffrey, I did want to thank you very much for joining us and hang around. We're going to come back to you in post-show in just a few minutes. And for those of you joining us live, stay with us. We'll talk to Jeffrey just for a little bit longer in post-show. And for those of you not joining us live, why weren't you joining us live? You should have been joining us live.
Shame on you.
And you can always order Space Vidcast Epic to watch a little bit of this post-show. And of course, Jeffrey's book, Selling Peace is available now on apogeebooks.com, and they're the fine folks who set up a lot of our great interviews, and so certainly go over and help them out. And like every week, we have a contest where you can win a free copy of our guest's book. And I did the little twit rand, and we won our own book. So we're going to try that again.
And we already have one.
It really truly is random,
Because
so that's how that happened.
That's the nice thing about Apogee is they send us they send us a copy so that we can have one for ourselves.
Delay, stall.
But just like every Apogee book, it's just chock full of so much information, and they really do know how to pick their authors. I'll tell you that much.
A Japanese person just won the book. I have no idea how to pronounce Can you pronounce that?
No.
Funa? Myfuna. Just won the Selling Peace book. Contact you back on Twitter. Thank you for retweeting Space Vidcast. And thank you guys all for joining us. Stay with us next week. We've got another guest. Do you know who it is next?
Yes, I have his book right here.
Oh, you came prepared.
Yes, I finally got prepared here. So it's William P. Suter, and it's the Guide to the Bell Test Pilot. It's called Rocket Belt Pilot's Manual. It's a little bit thinner than
I want a rocket belt.
Loretta,
I know you got me the lightsaber. Now I'm asking you for a rocket belt.
Would you stop? How about we do Yuri's Night 2011 next, all right? And then maybe you will deserve it. But yeah, so that's who we will have on next week. So there you go.
All right, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next week.